Have you ever walked into a room and sensed the cold stares, the half smiles, or the awkward silence from someone for reasons you couldn't quite grasp? Not all hatred is loud. Some negative emotions are concealed beneath a mask of politeness, hidden behind polite nods and hollow compliments. The truth is, not everyone will like you, and it's not because you've done something wrong. Sometimes, simply living true to yourself, walking with quiet confidence and staying calm amidst the storm is enough to unsettle others. And the point is this: those feelings often arise not from you, but from the wounds, expectations, and insecurities they carry. Stoicism doesn't teach us to please everyone. It teaches us how to stand firm in our values amid reactions we cannot control. In today's video, we'll explore 9 silent reasons why people might secretly dislike you, and how a person committed to inner tranquility should respond to that. 1. Envy and jealousy. Envy is a silent yet dangerous emotion. It doesn't knock, doesn't speak, doesn't declare war openly. Instead, it quietly takes root within a person, disguised under the mask of politeness, seemingly sincere compliments, or even outward acts of kindness. But beneath that mask lies a rising undercurrent, a feeling that makes others uncomfortable with your very existence. And here's the truth: you don't need to do anything wrong to provoke it. Envy often arises when someone sees in you something they desire but haven't achieved. It could be your success, your composed demeanor, your resilience, your discipline, or simply the way you live authentically without pretense. You become a mirror, and in that mirror, they see their own stagnation, indecision, or abandoned dreams. Rather than face that truth, accept it, and change, many will choose the easier path, blaming you, criticizing you, avoiding you, or even trying to drag you down to feel better about themselves. That is why someone who once admired you may suddenly grow distant, why a colleague who used to collaborate well might now belittle your achievements, or why a close friend falls silent whenever you accomplish something worth celebrating. It's not you who changed. It's their feelings toward you, when your presence no longer makes them feel safe with their self-image. Stoicism reminds us that the emotions others have toward us, whether favorable or hostile, lie outside our control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This means you don't need to shrink yourself just so others can breathe easier, nor should you apologize for your own growth. If your progress unintentionally touches someone else's wounds, you may understand it, even feel compassion, but you're not responsible for it. Envy is not your fault. It says far more about the insecurity within others than it does about you. When someone tries to diminish you through sarcasm, rumors, dismissal, or indirect attacks, remember, they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to how they feel when they're near you. And those feelings are theirs to resolve, not yours. In such moments, the best thing you can do is hold your composure. Don't argue, don't defend, don't lower yourself to seek validation. Your calm is your clearest declaration. Keep living according to your values, doing the work you believe in, pursuing your goals with quiet clarity. Your attitude will speak for itself, and time will bear witness. 2. Misunderstanding and poor communication. Not all resentment comes from envy or overt conflict. Sometimes it begins quietly, subtly, from a misread glance, an unclear remark, a message left unanswered, or simply a moment of silence at the wrong time. These seemingly harmless moments can mark the beginning of prolonged misunderstandings, leading someone to see you in a different light. And the painful truth is, they are not reacting to your true self, but to a version of you they've created in their mind. A distorted, inaccurate version that feels very real to them. Misunderstanding rarely starts from ill intent. It begins in the gap between intention and perception. What you think, say, or do isn't always received the way you meant. You might be expressing concern, but the other person perceives it as control. You may be lost in thought, but appear cold and distant. A harmless joke might hurt someone. Fatigue-induced silence may be taken as arrogance, and so the gap begins to widen, not because of malice, but because neither side voices what needs to be understood. Stoicism reminds us, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Marcus Aurelius. This means people often react not to reality, but to their interpretation of it. And once someone believes in a negative version of you, they will continue collecting evidence to support that belief. No matter how subjective, they'll remember the texts you didn't reply to, but forget the nights you stayed up listening. They'll recall a careless remark, but ignore the times you stood by them. The mind dislikes ambiguity. It fills in gaps with assumptions, and those assumptions are often the seeds of resentment. In such situations, our instinct is often to defend, to explain, to justify, or to get angry. But the Stoic chooses another path, to approach with calm and a spirit of understanding. They don't rush to prove themselves right, but seek to understand where the disconnect began. They don't argue to win, but communicate to clarify. Because they know, no meaningful connection can thrive without clarity. And if the other party refuses to engage, choosing prejudice over truth, the Stoic accepts this too, as part of life, with no resentment, no self-harm. The Stoic understands that misunderstandings are inevitable when people see the world through different lenses. But we always have the choice to face them with reason, patience, and sincerity. In a world full of noise and misjudgment, the one who speaks with clarity, humility, and without ego will always be the one who holds peace within. And sometimes, that peace is the most powerful answer to misunderstandings left unresolved. 3. Rumors and gossip. You don't need to do anything wrong to become disliked. Sometimes, all it takes is not being present when someone tells a false story about you. A rumor is not like a public accusation. It's more like a small ink stain that gradually seeps into a white sheet of paper. It begins with a casual remark, a joke just for fun, or a distorted detail. But once it passes through a second or third mouth, that detail is no longer intact. It swells, mutates, and eventually becomes a completely different version. A version that others start to believe is true. Rumors operate quietly, without noise, without the need for verification. What makes them dangerous isn't their accuracy, but their appeal. People are drawn more to what stirs emotion than to dull truths. A dramatic story spreads more easily than neutral facts. And once a rumor aligns with someone's existing doubts, they will believe it without question. At that point, you're no longer judged by your real actions, but by a distorted image crafted by others. Stoicism teaches that reputation doesn't belong to you. It's a shadow that follows you, shaped by others' perspectives. And like everything beyond our control, reputation is not something we should center our lives around. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This means you cannot stop people from misrepresenting you, but you can choose how to live on. When caught in a story that isn't yours, it's tempting to push back, to clarify, to prove, to call everyone and explain. But the truth is, the more you try to explain, the more the rumor spreads. People won't remember what you said. They'll only remember that something happened. That's why the Stoic chooses principled silence, not out of weakness, but from understanding. No one untangles a spider web by tugging at every strand. Silence in integrity is a form of strength. It's not surrender, but trust in time, in action, and in the consistency of character. The honest person cannot be undone by lies, because truth stands firm over time. And those who truly know you will not be swayed by a story they never witnessed. You don't need to chase down every rumor to extinguish every spark. Stand firm, do your work well, live kindly and clearly each day. That's how you show the world who you are. Not with words, but with presence. Innocence does not need to shout to be believed, and truth, though it may arrive late, carries more weight than every whispered falsehood. So let them talk, let the story pass, and you keep walking, steady, unmoved, and needing no permission to be yourself. 4. Personal insecurity. Some people will never say outright that they dislike you, but you'll feel it in their averted eyes, in their silence when you share something good, in their half-hearted compliments, and in the growing distance over time. The sad part is, you've done nothing wrong. And sadder still, you may have once supported, helped, or sincerely cared for them. But what you don't see is the battle they're fighting, not with you, but with their own insecurity. Insecurity is a quiet yet intense emotion. It makes people feel small, inadequate, not enough in their own skin. When someone has never faced their fear of failure, their self-doubt, their abandoned dreams, or their feeling of not being worthy, they don't know how to release it, and unconsciously, they look for something to blame. When you show up with calm, confidence, or simply by living in alignment with your values, you become a mirror no one asked for, but one that's all too clear. In that mirror, they don't just see you, they see everything they haven't yet dared to confront in themselves. This is where the human psyche's defense mechanism kicks in. Instead of facing the painful truth of their stagnation, they externalize it. They criticize you, dissect your words, interpret your actions to assign intentions you never had. Not because they truly understand you, but because they need a reason to feel better about themselves. This is projection, a mechanism that causes people to hate what they secretly long for, but do not possess, or what they once dreamed of but gave up on. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." For the insecure, you haven't hurt them. They are hurt by what you represent. You represent the discipline they once pursued but abandoned. You represent the confidence they never built. You represent someone imperfect, yet unafraid to be seen as such, and that makes them feel weak. Those on the Stoic path do not answer insecurity with hostility. They don't shrink to make others more comfortable, but neither do they scorn or mock another's fear. They remain calm, live with dignity, and understand this. Not everyone is ready to confront their own inner world. And that resentment, though unfair, is a symptom of unhealed pain. You're not responsible for shrinking yourself so others feel enough. You're not obligated to fix anyone's inner world. What you must do is continue living honestly, not arrogant but unapologetic for your strength. That is how you keep your compassion without losing your boundaries, and that is also how you honor someone else's journey of growth, even if it is slower, messier, or takes a different path. Because the Stoic understands, light is not meant to blind others, but to illuminate the road you walk, quietly, steadily, without the need for approval. 5. Silent competition. In any environment, work, friendships, family, or even among like-minded individuals, competition always exists. At a healthy level, it drives people to grow, improve themselves, and inspire one another. But when competition stops being a motivation to improve and becomes a quiet obsession with being better than others, it starts to sour. At that point, you're no longer seen as a companion on the path of growth, but as a rival. Even if you've never declared a contest, even if you're simply focused on your own path. Silent competition is rarely spoken aloud. It hides behind subtle, belittling comments, behind absence when support is needed, behind polite smiles with insincere eyes. Someone once close to you might grow distant after your achievements. A former collaborator might pull back once you take a step forward. The irony is, you didn't create this race. You're just living true to your abilities, values, and efforts. Yet in someone else's mind, your success becomes a measurement of their inadequacy. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "The desire for others' approval is a form of slavery. When someone ties their self-worth to whether they stand higher or lower than another, they lose the joy of personal progress and see only anxiety, comparison, and envy. They begin to see you as a threat, not because you've wronged them, but because your growth reminds them they've been left behind. Instead of asking, 'What can I learn from this person?' they ask, 'How can I stop them from getting ahead?' And just like that, the relationship shifts from collaboration to quiet rivalry, and slowly to distance, even hostility. For the Stoic, the only meaningful competition is with oneself. To be better than yesterday, to grow each day, not to outshine anyone, but to live in alignment with one's potential. Epictetus taught, "No one can steal your inner progress unless you hand it over." This means you don't need to join the invisible race others construct, nor do you need to dim yourself to make others comfortable. Inner steadiness comes from knowing where you're going, why, and staying the course, unmoved by petty comparisons. If someone silently competes with you, let them do so alone. You don't need to respond, prove anything, or appear superior. Let your actions speak. Remain committed to your principles, not for admiration, not for validation. True maturity is not measured by how many people you surpass, but by whether you remain grounded when measured against others. 6. Differences in values. Not everyone who dislikes you does so because you did something wrong. Sometimes, the only reason someone quietly distances themselves, grows cold, or envies you is because you're different. Not different in looks, habits, or background, but different at a deeper level. In how you see life, make decisions, and especially in the values you choose to live by. Differences in values don't always manifest clearly. It's not like a direct debate or a visible conflict. Instead, they quietly seep into conversations, into subtle reactions, gradually creating a silent divide. You might be someone who values discipline, persistence, and honesty, while another prizes flexibility, ease, or appearances. You may choose simplicity and mindfulness, while they chase status, glamour, or social standards. Your choices, even when non-judgmental, can still feel threatening to others, because your presence somehow becomes a mirror reflecting a way of life they've never paused to question. Epictetus once said, "Each person is the result of their own experiences, circumstance, upbringing, loss, and the things they once believed to be true." This means no one grows up the same way, and not everyone is ready to accept that there might be another way to live, a path they never considered. That's why, when you live with clarity and conviction, without following the crowd, some people will feel uncomfortable. They don't hate you because you've done something wrong. They hate you because you dared to do something they haven't yet had the courage to try. Live true to yourself. However, the Stoic does not try to convince others to change. They don't spread their values as if they were universal truths. Instead, they live rightly, kindly, and firmly, but without needing agreement. They understand that value differences are inevitable and even necessary, because it is from that diversity that we learn tolerance, humility, and inner strength. If someone dislikes you for being different, let them have that right. You don't need to reshape your life to fit someone else's framework. You only need to ensure that the values you follow are the result of reflection, not imitation. And you must be brave enough to accept that not everyone will understand you. And that's perfectly okay. The Stoic does not live to be accepted. They live to remain true to themselves. And sometimes, just holding a quiet conviction is enough to feel like a threat to those living borrowed values. But that is not your burden to carry. Your duty is to keep walking with clarity, steadiness, and respect for irreconcilable differences. 7. Lack of empathy. In an ideal world, people would see one another with understanding, listen with open hearts, and offer goodwill before judgment. But reality rarely works that way. One reason someone may quietly dislike you, even when you've done nothing wrong, is because they cannot or choose not to understand you. A lack of empathy doesn't always manifest as obvious hostility. More often, it shows up as indifference, snap judgments, and assumptions formed from an incomplete picture of who you are. When someone lacks empathy, they don't ask why you behave a certain way. Don't put themselves in your shoes to see what you're going through. Don't consider the silent pressures or wounds you carry. They look only from the outside, through the narrow lens of their own perspective, and draw shallow conclusions. You may be silent because you're tired, but they think you're arrogant. You may decline an invitation to recharge, and they believe you're dismissive. You may succeed through perseverance, and they say you're just lucky or backed by someone else. Lack of empathy often stems from an overinvestment in the self. When someone is too absorbed in their own narrative, there is no space left to recognize that others have their own journeys, pains, and reasons that may not be visible. They see life as a stage where they are the lead, and everyone else's actions are filtered through the lens of, how does this affect me? In such a world, it's hard for you to be fully seen. You become a side character in a script they wrote themselves. And if you don't fit the role, you become the problem. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always have the option of having no opinion." This is not only a method of preserving inner peace, it's a reminder that not every judgment deserves a reaction. When you're misunderstood by someone lacking empathy, remember, the issue isn't you. The issue is that they lack the capacity to grasp the full story, the stillness to look deeper, or the courage to admit they were wrong. A Stoic does not live to explain everything. They understand that not everyone is ready to listen. They know that empathy is a bridge, and not everyone wishes to cross it. When faced with coldness rooted in misunderstanding, guard your peace. Don't justify yourself to someone who has chosen to misread you. Don't exhaust yourself trying to satisfy a mind that has shut its doors to reason. You cannot teach empathy to someone unwilling to learn, but you can live with consistency so that when they're ready, they may come to see you for who you truly are. And if they never do, you can still live in freedom, not defined by distorted perceptions, but by the clarity you hold for yourself. That is the strength internal empathy with yourself can give. 8. Lack of recognition. Not everyone needs praise every day, but almost everyone desires one thing: to be seen. When someone puts in effort, makes quiet sacrifices, and contributes silently without acknowledgement, they begin to feel as if they don't exist. And that feeling, being overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted, when prolonged, quietly builds into resentment, which may turn into irritation, envy, or even dislike, directed at those who seem to be seen more often. Lack of recognition doesn't always show up as a concrete act. It may be that you were mentioned in a meeting and they weren't. You may be praised for a result they also contributed to, but were forgotten. You may be celebrated on social media while their silent efforts remain invisible. To someone who feels overshadowed, every bit of spotlight you receive, no matter how deserved, can feel blinding. They don't just see your success, they see themselves being compared, excluded, and that feeling easily turns to distance, even hostility. Epicurus once said, "Recognition is often more precious than reward." No one wants to beg for acknowledgement, but if someone constantly feels disregarded or taken as a given, it becomes nearly impossible not to harbor hurt. And when they see you being recognized, even if you've fully earned it, they won't see it with objectivity. They'll see it through the unspoken pain within themselves. The irony is, you didn't cause this. You weren't the one who ignored them. You didn't steal their light, but you've become a symbol of what they crave. Presence, appreciation, acknowledgement. And from that, an invisible tension arises. They begin to question you, scrutinize your imperfections, or deny your value. Not because you are wrong, but because they are hurting. The Stoic understands that external recognition is a luxury beyond control. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them truly understand what they are judging." That is, true worth doesn't lie in applause, but in your ability to stand tall when no one claps. And when someone dislikes you for being acknowledged, you need not apologize for it. You only need to keep your compassion without dimming your light to soothe someone else's envy. If needed, offer recognition generously, when it is sincere. But if that recognition is demanded by pressure, you have every right to remain silent. For kindness cannot be coerced, and recognition should never come from guilt. The Stoic does not live to be praised, nor to avoid being disliked. They live to act rightly, and to know that recognition may come or not, but that changes nothing about the path they choose. And that is real strength. 9. The pressure of social expectations. There is a kind of resentment that doesn't stem from your actions, but from the fact that you don't behave as others expect. Not because you've done something wrong, but simply because you don't conform to the common denominator that society, family, community, or the collective has laid out. When you choose a path that differs from conventional norms, you don't just go against expectations. You inadvertently shake the worldview of those who have always believed there is only one right way to live, and that makes them uncomfortable, even challenged. Society tends to favor order, and often, order is not fairness. It's familiarity. People feel secure when things unfold in ways they've seen, heard, or been taught. When you attend the right school, pursue the right career, and behave according to norms, you create no disruption. But if you leave a stable job to chase a personal dream, choose simplicity over materialism, remain single instead of marrying on schedule, then that choice, though deeply personal, makes some feel as if you're rejecting their way of life. Even without saying a word, your existence becomes a silent form of dissent. And when someone feels questioned, their reaction is rarely curiosity. It's defense. They start calling you impulsive, unrealistic, irresponsible. They're not speaking out of concern. They're protecting the values they've clung to for years. Because if you can live differently, truthfully, and well without the things they've relied on, then maybe what they've depended on isn't truly essential. And that thought is too unsettling to face. Stoicism doesn't encourage us to live rebelliously for the sake of rebellion. It urges us to live in alignment with our nature, whether or not it's accepted by the majority. Epictetus once emphasized, "You owe no one an explanation for your way of life, as long as it's built on careful reflection and honesty." That means you don't need permission to live your own life. You don't have to conform to a standard that doesn't reflect your true self. You also don't have to argue with those who can only see through their outdated lens. The Stoic understands. Some will resent you simply because you don't follow the mold. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It only means you're doing what they're not yet ready to do. Choose your own life. And the beauty is, you don't need anyone's approval to be yourself. You only need one thing, inner conviction, to keep walking, even when the eyes around you grow less friendly. Let them hold on to their standards, and you hold on to your freedom. Don't let their discomfort become the reason you silence the truth in your heart, because pretending to be someone you're not just to be accepted is too high a price to pay. And the Stoic chooses freedom, not comfort, as the ultimate destination. I used to believe that if I lived kindly, harmed no one, worked hard, and treated people sincerely, there would be no reason for anyone to dislike me. But reality isn't that simple. There are cold stares, veiled remarks, and growing distance without any stated reason. At first, I felt sad and confused, constantly asking myself what I had done wrong. But the deeper I ventured into inner reflection, and the more I engaged with Stoic philosophy, the clearer it became. Not all resentment is rational, and not every reason lies with us. We cannot control the emotions, wounds, or unmet expectations that others carry within. The only thing we can do is live with transparency, composure, and principles. If our presence makes someone feel unsettled, that is their opportunity to confront themselves, not a burden for us to carry. I choose to keep walking, refusing to let goodwill be distorted by others' reactions, and not letting baseless hatred prevent me from living true to my core values. If you found this content valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video. And no matter how loud the world becomes, may you always preserve the stillness within, because that is where real strength lies. See you in the next video.